ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with humble hearts, oh let the ancient words impart.
Afternoon. May we begin with the word of silence. Amen. So we're still dealing with the subject of the midnight hour, and basically the approach I was using, the way that really come to the conclusion I want us to come to. We're using the 25-20. And what was I saying about the 25-20? I was saying the 25-20 is a symbol of what? Of what, sir? Okay, no, not numbers. Yes, true, but what truth is the 25-20 based on? The covenant. Did you not say that? 25-20 is about the covenant. Is it not so?
It's true.
You go to Leviticus 25 and 26, the Lord says, if you obey me, I'll bless you. If you disobey me, I'll curse you. Right? That's a covenant, it's an agreement, is it not? And if I curse you, I will scatter you. And when I scatter you, I'm not just going to scatter you indefinitely, I'm going to scatter you for a period of time. Is it not so? So Leviticus 25 is about time. The context of chapter 26 is also about time. But he says, at the conclusion of that punishment, those of you that remain, if they turn to me and fulfill the conditions of renewing the covenant, then I will remember them and renew the covenant. Yes? Yes? So you notice there were how many 25-20 periods in history? Two. And those two 25-20s were typified in history more than once. One illustration we gave was Jacob's experience. Is it not so? Jacob is, what's his other name? Israel, right? His name is Israel. So would he typify the nation of Israel? Would he typify the nation of Israel? Jacob himself, he would. And how many times did he have to go through affliction in terms of working for his wife? Twice. So he had two 25-20s of affliction, right? 7 times. Is it not so? Then you go to Daniel chapter 4, you see the same thing, where you have a 25-20 illustrated in Nebuchadnezzar's experience, and a 25-20 illustrated in Belshazzar's experience. Yes? And then you go to the scattering of Judah by Assyria and Babylon. When Assyria began stripping Judah of its independence, how many years passed before the Babylonians came back to continue the punishment? 70 years. And then when Babylon came in the time of Jehoiakim, what captivity began? The 70-year captivity, which came to an end in the time of Cyrus. So you had two 70-year periods, which I was saying are types of what? The two 25-20s. So you've got them illustrated in different ways, and the other illustrations which I didn't mention, didn't touch on. But at the conclusion of these time periods of punishment and scattering, what does the Lord do? He gathers the remnant of people. He enters into covenant with them, right? In the case of the 70-year captivity, when he gathered them back to their land, he caused them to do what, which my brother has been taking us through. To rebuild Jerusalem and build the temple, is it not so? Which is an illustration of a work that happens at the end of the world. At the conclusion of the 25-20s in Millerite history, what did the Lord do? Within those 46 years, he gathered a remnant of people. That eventually became the Adventist Church, is it not so? And from the time the first 2520 ended to the time the second 2520 ended was how many years? And 46 is the number of what? Of the temple, the building of the temple. So therefore we know that when we look at the principles of the scattering and the gathering, when we bring them down to the end of the world and apply them to our history, then we know at the conclusion of the scattering period, what does the Lord do? He gathers the remnant unto himself and he builds them up in a holy temple. But unlike past histories, according to Peter, what kind of temple is he building up at the end of the world? It's a spiritual temple. And as he's building up this spiritual temple, what aspect is involved in the building of this temple? Is it just bringing people together to study? What else is involved? What other important element is connected with the re-entering of the Lord into his covenant with his people at the end of the scattering period? It's what? Besides just, gathering people to study the message, yes, character development, but someone mentioned the answer. Whisper the answer. Could you say that louder? Could you say that louder? Organization. Is it not so? When God gathers the people, he has to organize them. Does not the Bible and the Spirit of Christ teaches that God is a God of order? Are we tired? So why are we so subdued now? Does not the Bible teach that God is a God of order? It does, right? And if he's going to gather a group of people unto himself, he will organize them. So I'm saying part of the truth that's being taught by the 2520 is the organization of the church triumphant at the end of the world, at the conclusion of a period of scattering. And God is getting, at the point we are at, with the increase of knowledge that has been opening up, especially since 2014, you know how my brother was mentioning that from 9/11 to 2014, you had a steady development of the message, a major development each year. But once you get to 2014, it's like the floodgates of light were just opened up. And a lot of things began to be clarified. So we are now in the history where a lot of things are being clarified, and even issues to do with the covenant are being clarified, which include organization and who God is using to facilitate that work of organization. You know how we've got to a point in this message where we are identifying the very administration in the United States that is to bring about the Sunday law crisis, right? We are naming these people by name, and we're identifying the role of Russia, and we're even identifying the leader who is going to be there when these developments take place. Is it not so? The message is getting very fine-tuned, right? Very pointed. So also when we come to the intricacies, the nitty-gritties of the covenant that the Lord is entering into the church triumphant, the Lord gets to the very detail of who the individuals are who he appoints to do a certain work in the building up of this temple. Yes? Yes? Yeah. So that's basically what we've been going through. I know there was a lot of information, a lot of numbers, a lot of patterns. But if you get to the crux of what I was trying to say, it's just this. That the 2520 identifies the scattering and the gathering. And at the end of the world, this principle of scattering and gathering, when God's people are being gathered and the temple is being rebuilt, God's people are being gathered together, they're organized. And when they're being organized, the Lord opens up the message of organization to the point where, if you're honest, He will leave you without a doubt as to which movement is leading, who the people are who are appointed to lead out in that movement, and what your duty is in light of that. Right? So that's what I would hope you see. And the reason why we need to see this is because we're in a shaking time, as we've already identified, that 2014 was a significant development in the movement, and a shaking that began in 1989 reached a significant new phase, right? Because the shaking just escalates all the way to the end. But when you get to 2014, it reaches a very important new phase, where it's the final, the concluding, separation of two groups within this movement, because the Lord now wants His church triumphant to do the work of bringing the Levites and then afterwards the Gentiles. right? So it's important for you to know this because there are many voices, not only in Adventism, but that profess this movement that are now, teaching certain things. And they're taking advantage of those that are new, those that are not grounded, those that don't have, a good enough idea of what's going on in this message, and they're led astray. So it's in mercy that the Lord is opening this up. It's a difficult presentation because it can be misunderstood. People can think you're trying to promote personalities or to teach kingly power, but it really is, when you look at it from a correct perspective, this is the Lord's mercy in trying to put a hedge around us, a guard, about how we are to go about this organization, who God is leading in terms of opening up of truth, etc., etc. So that's just a quick review. Now, on page on page 111. Page 111, but I'll just put a few lines on the page first before I get to page 111. So, one thing that I mentioned was the basis of the 2520 ensuring this pattern. From 723 to 721 was a 3-year siege that basically brought the Northern Kingdom to an end. And from 1796 to 1798, which is also a period of 3 years, you've got the conclusion of the Papal Kingdom. I also mentioned another application from 1798 to 1800, which I believe is correct, but I won't do with it in this camp because I don't want to cause confusion as to its significance here at the end of the world. Then we looked at the other 2520 from 677, but I want to go to 677. I want to identify the 70-year captivity that is found within the second 2520 against Judah. This is when Jehoiakim was taken captive, and we know he served the king of Babylon 3 years. The Hebrew boys were in school in Babylon for 3 years. Is it not so? Now, I may be off on the dates, and I don't deny that because I'm not very good in chronology. But if I remember correctly, they finished their training or education in 604. But I could be wrong. I acknowledge that I could be wrong. But you see this, what did I say, 2520? And then 7. So you've got the 70-year period that follows the same pattern as the 2520. Then we looked at the 126. The 126 from 1863 to 1989. 1989. We saw a 3-year period at the end and a 3-year period at the beginning. 126. Remember all this, right? Do we?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was then saying that the 2520, the 7 years, and the 126 are the same, prophetically. And can you see why I'm saying that? Can you see why I'm saying that? Okay, why am I saying that? Since I say yes. I'm saying the 2520 is equivalent to the 70 years, which is equivalent to the 126. Prophetically, there's a symbol. And you said yes, you understand. So tell me why you understand. Because? Sorry, I didn't get that. They all involve the scattering. The 2520 was the scattering of Israel. So 70 years was the scattering of Judah within another 25 years. The 126 was the scattering in Miller Street. We all see that. It's something else you mentioned. You wanted to mention something.
There's a pattern of 3.
A pattern of 3. Got 3 years at the beginning, 3 years at the end, 3 years at the beginning, 3 years at the end, 3 years at the beginning, 3 years at the end. You see that? Do we see it or we don't see it? Yeah. Okay. So I'm saying all these as a symbol are the same. When you relate to the 70 years, prophetically you can relate to it as a 25-20. The 126 you can also relate to it as what? As a 25-20. So if in history you had 2 70 years, which we already mentioned, and you had 2 25-20s, it would follow that in our history what do you need? 126 years, right? So that's the first 126, and this is the second 126. From 1888, and we even showed why, to 2014. But Sister White worked with Jones and Wagner in this history for about 3 years until she went to Australia in 1891. And I was saying when you get to the end of the 126, you also have a period of 3 years. From 2012 to 2014. Right? That's all. Yes? And one of the things I was saying is when you get to 2012 to 2014, and my brother mentioned it in one of his previous presentations, is that when you get to this history of 2012 to 2014, this is a progressive conclusion or binding off of the foundational work, the laying of the foundation. Because from 2014, what begins? The rearing of the walls. This is the building of the temple. But when you get here, this is the conclusion of the foundation. When you've laid the foundation, then you can build the temple. Is it not so? Okay. So, now based on page 111, what you'll notice, when does the foundation begin to be laid? In our history. 9/11. And when is it finished? When is the foundation finished? 2014. But what do you have at the conclusion of the foundation? You have 3 years, don't you? You have a 3-year period. Yes or no? Okay, you have a 3-year period. So if this is the omega of the foundation, the conclusion of the foundation, what does Christ do? Illustrate again from the beginning because he's the Alpha and the Omega. So if you have a 3-year period at the beginning, what would you have? I mean, if you have a 3-year period at the end of the foundation, what would you have? A 3-year period at the beginning, right? And I'm saying this 3-year period is from 9/11 to 2004. Now, there was someone who asked me a question yesterday, because he quickly noticed it. I noticed it at some time. And he mentioned to me that 9/11 to 2004 is not 3 years. He said it's 4 years. Can you see that discrepancy? But I'm saying it's 3 years. Because his question was, why are you using exclusive reckoning here and you're using inclusive reckoning here? Right? Do you get the question? Because there I'm saying if you reckon it exclusively, then you can relate to 9/11 2004 as a 3-year period. But here you have to relate to it inclusively from 2012 to 2014 to 3 years. Because 2012, 2013, 2014, you get that. You have to include all the years. So here what you have, maybe let me do this first. Because what you have at the beginning here is a summary of the message. And what you have here at the end is also a summary of the message. So my answer to him was, I went back to the previous lines that I had put in place. This one can be a bit shaky, right? Because I'm not sure. But you notice from 607 to 604 is 4 years, but it's 3 years exclusive. If you look at 607, 606, 605, 604. That would be 4 years inclusively. But you can relate to it as 3 years exclusively, right? But when you come to 539 to 537, it's what? 539, 538, 537. It's 3 years inclusively. Do you see that? Do you see that?
Yes.
But this is the only one I'm not really sure about. But when you come to this one now, from 1860, the time that our church received a name, because this is the history of, I'm saying it's a portion of history in Adventism, where the church was being organized. It receives a name in 1860. In 1863, it's now a legal entity, right? And you can show that 1860 to 63 is actually a symbol in Bible prophecy based on Joshua. I don't remember the verse. I don't know if anyone knows the verse. It's in Joshua somewhere, where Joshua curses the person who rebuilt Jericho. It's either in Joshua or in Judges. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the verse. Cursed is he that rebuilds Jericho.
6:26.
Joshua 6. Okay. Thank you. So let's just go there maybe, just to make this point. Joshua chapter 6, verse 26. But I'm only just going to summarize this. If you want the details of it, if you watch this summary here, a Bible 2 table, it's explained in detail. This point I'm just going to summarize. So Joshua 6, verse 26 says, And Joshua adjured them at that time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord that riseth up and buildeth this city Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and in his youngest son shall he set up the gates of it. Now when you look at what gates represent in the Bible, they can represent many things, but one of the things they represent is churches, right? If you look at Genesis 28:17, where Jacob slept and he had stones for his pillows, what did he call the name of that place? Bethel, which means what? House of God. But he says this is none other than the house of God and the what? The gate of heaven. So the house of God is the what? Is the gate of heaven. That's the house of God. It's the church. The church is the medium through which those who are going to be saved will be saved. Is it not so? That's why the church was organized. It's organized for service. And all those who exist at a time when God is the church on earth are only saved as they attach themselves to that recognized church. Yes?
Yeah.
No matter how much they profess to love Jesus, if they don't acknowledge the means through which he works on the earth, they can't be saved. So the church is the gate of heaven. So when it's talking about cursed be the man that built the city Jericho, and it says, he shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and his youngest son shall he set up the gates of it. When you look at what happened in 1860, James White lost his last born son. You know that? In 1860, James White lost his last born son, and in 1863, he lost his firstborn son. And what happened in 1863? And I'm sure we all know what happened in 1863 in this world. Prophetically. The 2520 was set aside, and the 2520 becomes a symbol of what? Of the truth on these two charts. And what are these two charts? It's the foundations of Adventism, right? So as the church was beginning a progressive departure from truth, I'm saying it's similar to the work of rebuilding that which had been destroyed, the rebuilding of Jericho. Do you get what I'm saying? And by virtue of James White's involvement in the process of rejecting these truths and replacing these charts with the 1863 chart, you see him prophetically paying by the loss of his firstborn. Do you get what I'm saying? He laid the foundation thereof, of this work in the loss of his firstborn. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because what happened is his son slept on the material that was going to be used for the production of the 1863 chart, and he got an illness, and he died shortly thereafter. When you come to 1860, he was involved in the work of church organization, right? And I'm saying gates are churches. So you've got something to do with gates, to do with the church there, and it received its name in 1860 as well. And in that same year, his last born dies. So he lays the foundation in his firstborn, and the gates there. So I'm not saying James White was a wicked person. That's not what I'm teaching. But one thing you'll understand is James White was intimately connected with the prophetess, was he not? Sister White, he was married to the prophetess Sister White. And one of the truths that the Bible teaches about prophets is prophets are signs. In Isaiah 8 verse 18, Isaiah said, I and the children that the Lord has given me are for signs in Israel. Right? The very names of Isaiah's sons were significant. Ezekiel lost his wife, not because he was wicked, but because it was to teach an object lesson to Israel. Are you getting me? So I'm not saying, James White was a bad person and that God was just cruelly judging him in this history. But you see a fulfillment of prophecy in these years. So I'm saying these years are a symbol based on Bible prophecy. Are you getting my logic? But when you look at these 3 years that I'm relating to 3 years, it's actually 1860, 61, 62, 63. Inclusively, it would be how many years? 4 years. But exclusively, it's what? 3 years. But at the end of this 126, 1989 to 91 is 89, 90, 91. So it's inclusive. Do you see that? When you come to this line of 126, from 1888 to 1891, when Ellen White was eventually sent to Australia, I'm saying it's 3 years, but it's really what? It's 4 years, because it's 1888, 89, 90, 91. Inclusively, it would be 4 years. But exclusively, it's what? 3 years. But when you come to 2012 to 2014, it's what? It's inclusive. It's 3 years inclusive. So I'm saying based on 1, 2, 3 witnesses, maybe there's more. When you come to our reform line and you see this phenomenon, it's already there. It's already been illustrated in history. That when you look at the beginning 3 years, it's a 3-year period, but you have to reckon it exclusively. And at the end, it's a 3-year period and you reckon it inclusively. What it means, I don't know, right? But maybe the Lord will open it up one day. I'm sure He will, but I don't understand. But one thing I know is you can see it kind of in Ezra 7:9. We mentioned Ezra 7:9 the other day, where you have the first day of the first month, yes? And then the first day of the 5th month, and then the 10th day of the 7th month. Now, from the first day of the 1st month to the first day of the 5th month, how many days is it? From the first day of the 1st month to the first day of the 5th month, how many days is it? No. It's 121. It's 121. When would it be 120? Excluding the first day of the 5th month. So from the first day of the 1st month to the last day of the 4th month, that would be 120, right? So you've got a 120 period here. But from the first day of the 5th month to the 10th day of the 7th month, we say it's how many days? We say it's 70 days, right? But it's 70 days reckoning how? You have to include the 10th day of the 7th month and the first day of the 5th month, is it not so? So you keep seeing this phenomenon of, and it seems to be exclusive first, then inclusive second. But I don't know what it means. I don't know if you see that the pattern is there. You see that it's there. But what it means, I don't know. I just know enough to know that it's divine and that God is leading. And that it's showing us that who's been in control of this reform movement since its inception.
The wonderful number.
It's Christ. The wonderful number of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, whoever you want to call him. It's Christ. Right? So, I think my brother has already mentioned some of what happened in these years. But when you come to 2004, this is the first prophecy school that's organized by this movement. And it's the first, organized by this movement to teach the principles of this message in English. Right? It's the first one, which was Pinecrest or Ozone. It was a summary of the message that began to be opened up from 1989 to 9/11. Right? And when you come to 2012, Habakkuk's 2 tables was a follow-up summary of the same message, but it's more comprehensive. Right? It's bigger. Because this one was about 40-something presentations, this one was how many presentations? True, but if you're going to get technical, it was 93 and 95. It was 93 and 95, and maybe I'll deal with that at some point, because I believe it's prophetically significant. It was both 93 and 95. Because originally there were 95 presentations, but one got deleted and another one, I forget what happened to it, but they remained as 93. But originally they were meant to be 95. Are you getting what I'm saying? Okay. Now, let's see. The challenge is, with my next presentations, what I'm going to do, it really doesn't have notes. Because I couldn't finish these notes. But I hope you'll be able to follow nonetheless. Let's see if there's anything in these notes I still want to put in place there, no? Yeah, so basically now, I'm not going to be using the notes. Okay. So we see this pattern. The duration here. This is when the foundational truths are being put in place. What Brother Tao has been taking us through. The different truths that he was saying happened, like were opened up. The judgment of the day in the beginning of 9/11, the latter rain being a message, the 2520, the covenant lines, the desolation of Jerusalem, and all these other truths. They were being put in place in this history. Right? Okay. So now, I want to take up what I last took up yesterday and build on it. And I mentioned 44, and I was like, this was the conclusion of what? Of the second 2520. Is it not so? This was the conclusion of the first 2520. And I was saying 1798 prophecy calls it the what? Time of the end. But what you have here is the cleansing of the sanctuary, is it not? So it was the cleansing of the temple. You've got the number 46 because it's the end of 46 years, so you've got the building of the temple. You also have the third angel, don't you? You have the third angel's message. What else did we discuss? You have the opening of the book. So you have the opening of the books. And what else? Is there anything else we discussed yesterday? Okay, yeah, we change of dispensation. You have many things. Maybe as we go forward, we'll be able to see more of this. And I was saying, when you come to this first 126, which is the 2520, it ends where? At the time of the end. Is it not so?
Yeah.
Are we still together? It ends at the time of the end. So, if it ends at the time of the end in repetition to the first 2520, does it mean that the second 2520 has to have the characteristics repeated in the second 126? Did you hear my question?
No.
If the first 2520 ended at the time of the end, and the first 126 repeated that, ended at the time of the end, so you have similar characteristics, time of the end, time of the end. Therefore, if the second 2520 ended with these characteristics, should the second 126 end with the same characteristic? Yes, because that's how we approach the repetition of history line upon line. So when we come to 2014, what do you have? You have a temple cleansing. You also have the temple buildings, you know, so, which is something we've already mentioned. You also have the opening of the books. And you also have something that's still I know a new concept in many people's minds, but you have the third angel's message, right? In 2014, the third angel's message. And you have a change of dispensation and other things. So, as the temple is being built, we said it's representing what? What does it represent? Because now the foundation is laid and the temple is being built. So what does that represent? Okay, the message is being like brought to perfection. That's true. But what else? So what do the stones represent? The stones represent truths. But what else do they represent? The people that uphold those truths, right? So what other truth would it be teaching us besides the clarification of the message?
What is organizing?
Organization. So it means from 2014, organization becomes present truth in a very special sense, right? So therefore, if any movements would be done post-2014 in the organizing of this movement, who would be leading out in that work? I don't know if you get my question. Like, who's responsible for that work? Is it human beings?
It's God.
It's God, because God has already shown us through the line that it's time to build the temple. It's time to organize. Are you getting me? So if it is time to organize, when you see human beings now acting on that word, it is not a human work. It is a what? It is a divine work. It's just a stumbling block, to many, in that when God is doing His work on the earth, how does He do His work? He uses human beings. Right? He doesn't use angels. He uses human beings, does He not? So you'd expect that, okay, organization would be more acceptable if we saw the angel Gabriel flash through this room and then say, I have chosen that individual. Right? And then you say, okay, because Gabriel came, now we accept him. But God doesn't work that way. Right? And one of the reasons He doesn't work that way is because He wants to test our sincerity. Right? It comes as a test. But He gives us enough evidence to believe. And even the very... If you look carefully, there's enough reason to see why the Lord would select those people. If you follow what I'm saying. There's enough reason. When you go to John, let's just go to John, chapter 2. John chapter 2, the first time Christ cleansed the temple, I'm saying the cleansing of the temple, it's true, right, that Sister White says the two temple cleansings apply Revelation 18:1-3 and then Revelation 18:4. I'm not denying that, right? But I'm saying based on Luke 10, symbols can have more than one meaning, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is if you can mark a temple cleansing here, we have prophetic license to take the characteristics of each of these temple cleansings and put them over the top of one another. Did you get what I just said? Let me try and illustrate what I'm saying. Let me see if I can think of a quick one, or an easy one. I don't know if you all know the history of the trumpet, but the Second War began in 1449, is it not so? And then in 1453, a major development took place in the fall of Constantinople. So you had a period of 4 years. This is the beginning of the sixth trumpet. But when you get to the end of the sixth trumpet, when does the sixth trumpet end? It's 1840. But from 1840, you have another 4 years to 1844. Historically, 391 years, 15 days. Right? So you've got a 4-year period at the beginning of the sixth trumpet, 4-year period at the end. And I'm saying at the end of the world, because Christ illustrates the end from the beginning, what you can do is cut this up. Right? You cut it up, and then you lay them over the top of one another. line upon line. So this becomes 1449 and 1453 at the beginning, and those characteristics are to be combined with the characteristics of 1840 to 1844 at the end of the world. Do you get what I'm saying? And what this would emphasize is external events connected with Islam at the end of the world and the other nations. But these would be internal, because this was a wonderful manifestation of God's power within the Millerite movement. But you need to understand that these things happen at the same time at the end of the world. Are you getting me?
Yeah.
So I'm saying you can take Christ's temple cleansing at the beginning and Christ's temple cleansing at the end and do what? Over the top of one another, line upon line. Are you getting me? So yesterday we mentioned the second temple cleansing of Christ, that when he began to cleanse the temple, what question was he confronted with? Authority. Who gave you authority to do these things? So once you come to post-2014, what would you expect to become an issue within this movement as it's being cleansed or purified? Authority, right? And for those that have been following long enough, have you been seeing a challenging of authority of those who have been ordained? Yes, it's been going on. But another question that was raised, which was the point I wanted to make, was in the first temple cleansing. So let's go to John 2. And we'll read verse 18, just knowing that it's the first temple cleansing, but I'm just reading verse 18. It says, Then answered the Jews, and said unto him, What sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? So here it wasn't so much a question of authority, though it was. But what was the question? They wanted a sign, whether Christ was really the Messiah or not. And what does Messiah mean? Anointed one. So they wanted some evidence that suited them to show that Christ was really the one who had been anointed. Following 2014, was there an anointing that took place?
Yeah.
When did that anointing take place? It happened in 2016, right? And you have questions rising up on the fitness of the men who have been anointed, and a desire to see whether, what basically in the language of the Jews, what sign do they show that they are really the ones whom the Lord has set apart to lead out in this way? But I'm saying to you, Sister White actually says the Jews had ample evidence that Christ was the Messiah. Right? He didn't need to tell them. It was just self-evident. They had enough evidence if they wanted to see that Christ was the Messiah. And I'm saying there's enough evidence if you want to see who God's appointed at. You don't even need to ask why. Because the evidence is abundant. Anyway, moving on. Maybe before we move on, let's just go to the second temple cleansing, because I want us to look at the response of Christ, so that we trace where the problem was for these people, which can be a potential problem for us even in this room. So after he cleanses the temple the second time, verse 23, Matthew 21:23, says, And when he was come into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came unto him as he was teaching and said, By what authority doest thou these things, and who gave thee this authority? So you see, there's a question of authority. When the temple is cleansed, you have a question, what sign do you show that you have been anointed? Christ doesn't give them he gives them an answer, but it's not the one they want. And then the other question is asked is, what authority? And who gave thee this authority? Right? Is that not so? So you might be asking the question, who gave these men this authority? And Christ gives you the answer. Verse 24. And Jesus answered and said unto them, I also will ask you one thing, which if you tell me in likewise, will I tell you by what authority I do these things? The baptism of John, whence was it? From heaven or of men? And they reasoned with themselves, saying, if we shall say from heaven, he will say unto us, why did ye not then believe him? But if we shall say of men, we fear the people, for all John is a prophet. And they answered Jesus and said, we cannot tell. And he said unto them, neither tell I you by what authority I do these things. So you see, Christ identifies what their problem was. Now, in terms of prophetic symbolism, who would John symbolize at the end of the world? I don't want a name, I mean, in terms of the everlasting gospel. In terms of the everlasting gospel, the first angel. And then Christ would be a symbol of what? The second angel, right? And it's in the time of the second angel that Christ is confronted with these questions concerning authority. And it's 2014 within the history of the second angel. It's 2016 within the history of the second angel. So you've got these questions concerning authority. But the answer that is given to those that are asking, by what authority do these men within the second angel who've been anointed do these things? The answer is the work of the first angel from 1989 to 9/11. That work that you profess to receive, was it of God or of men? I'm not saying you should answer me, it's just a rhetorical question. Right? The question that is being posed to you is, was this a divine work from 1989 to 9/11? Because if you're not convicted concerning the messages and the work that happened from 1989 and 9/11, and the man whom the Lord used to do this work, then you'd obviously have a problem with what happened here, because the man who facilitated that anointing is the same man who was involved in this work. So the question is he being led of the Lord or not? And being honest, if you don't believe that he's being led of the Lord, then it's an indicator that you really didn't settle into the first principles of this message. You know, our brother has been taking us through the stones that were quarried out, which were the same stones that were then used to lay the foundation, is it not so? It's a continuous work, it's not a different work that you cut up into independent segments, right? This is all connected, it's a progressive development all the way. So therefore, if you're rejecting any new development here, it's because you never really settled into the developments back here. And why I'm saying this to us here is because, as my brother mentioned, it's very important for all of us here to be established in the foundational principles and concepts of this message. Right? Far better that we spend more time in the truths that were opened up from 89 to 9/11, and even from 9/11 to 2014, than that we just, try and grapple with this advancing life when we don't have, a firm foundation for our feet. Are you understanding? If you don't settle into the conviction as an individual concerning the development of the work and the message in this movement from 1989, you can never truly in your heart accept the men whom God has appointed. You can't. You can't. So therefore there is a work that has been given to us to go back and settle into these things. Do we see the importance of these things? And this is what Sister White says. Those that did not receive the message of John could not be benefited by the testimony of Jesus. Then they rejected
Pentecost.
Pentecost. They put Christ on the cross. They could not receive Pentecost and they were left in total darkness. Those that did not receive the first angel's message in Millerite history could not be benefited by the second. Therefore, they were not prepared to receive the midnight cry and enter into the most holy place with Christ. Is it not so? So, if we don't receive into our hearts the truths of 89 to 9/11, we will not be able to receive the truths of 9/11 to present. And therefore, we cannot see the developments that are now taking place in cutting out of people from the Adventist church to make up the church triumph. You can't accept that. If you haven't been following all this, when you hear a message that's telling you that God is establishing the church triumphant, and it's a separate corporation from the SDA corporate body, it becomes a struggle for you because you did not receive the first. So you need to go back. Like, we all need to go back. If you follow what I'm saying. How much time do you have?
25 minutes.
25 minutes. Okay. Alright, so let's move on to the point of the third angel's message. I'll read it. So, when you look at Mennonite history, you had, I'll just take the portion I want. You had April 19, 1844, and then you had July 21st in the development of the Midnight Cry message, 1844. You also had August 15, 1844, and then October 22nd, 1844. This was the shut door, was it not? This was the shut door for the Millerites. This was the Midnight Cry. This was midnight. And this was the tarrying time. You all agree with this? Agree? Okay. So, when you come to our history, and I'm particularly dealing with the history of the priest, what would April 19 be?
9/11.
April 19 would be 9/11/2001. This would be the tarrying time. What would the shut door be for the priest?
Midnight.
For the priest, the way mark we usually call midnight, right? The binding off. Now, based on this pattern, what would it mean? What's missing? It means there would have to be two waymarks preceding the shut door if we were to repeat the pattern set for us in Millerite history. Do you see that or you don't? Because I know you can understand it at the big level. Okay, let's begin at the big level, maybe, to make it easy for everyone. Where do we usually mark the shut door for 7-day Advent? The Sunday road. The Sunday road. And then we say preceding the Sunday road is what? Is the midnight cry. And preceding the midnight cry is midnight. Right? Okay. So, let me ask you a question. When does the first angel get empowered? When does it get empowered? It's confirmed that it's empowered, right? Then when does the second arrive? 9/11. Got the arrival of the second. Now, in our history, when does the third angel's message arrive?
October 27th.
In our history.
In our history.
In our history.
Sunday.
Okay, it's fine. Let's work through it. Let's work through it. What does the book of Revelation call the Sunday law? What symbol is it given? The book of Revelation. It's the mark of the beast. So this is the mark of the beast crisis, is it not? The mark of the beast. But Sister White tells us that preceding the mark of the beast crisis, where God's people receive either the mark of the beast or the seal of God, what comes? It's an image of the beast crisis. Is it not so? So you have the image of the beast crisis, that precedes the mark of the beast crisis. Yes? Do we all follow that? Yes. And we are also told that in the parable of the 10 virgins, the Sunday law would be what way mark? The shut door. But preceding the shut door, what do you have? You have a cry at midnight. So it means the cry at midnight would be the same place where you have what? The image of the beast. Right? Just like the mark of the beast is where you have the shut door. So the way mark before is the midnight cry, and the crisis before the mark of the beast crisis is the image of the beast. So it's the same way mark. Do you understand that? Do you follow that? Okay. Now, another question is which angel addresses both the image and the mark of the beast? So can the third angel arrive at the Sunday? No, because what point is there for the third angel, at least for Adventists, to address the image of the beast when the image of the beast is already, when the image of the beast test is already come and gone? when it's already done its work. What would be the point of then opening up the message when that test is passed? Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So can the third angel arrive at the Sunday?
No.
It can't arrive at the Sunday, right? It has to arrive before the Sunday. Do you agree? And putting it simple, we say it arrives where? At the midnight cry. But we know that the midnight cry in Middle history was what? In terms of arrival, empowerment, it was the empowerment of the second angel, is it not? So it means in our history, what would the midnight cry image of the beast test be?
Tree.
It would also be the empowerment of the second angel. But at the same time, it's what? It's the arrival of the third. Right? Are you following that logic? I'll ask you another question. What was the difference between the midnight cry and midnight?
Lord. In terms of the message.
In terms of the message, August 15 and July 21st. Don't tell me one was done in Boston and another in Exeter, because those are irrelevant.
They were the same.
It was the same message, was it not? So would it have the same effect? Why no?
Yes. It's the same.
Because it's the same message. Why would it not have the same effect? I'm not saying whether people chose to respond to it or not. That's not what I'm saying. But would it have the same effect of empowering the second angel?
Yeah.
So it means the empowerment of the second angel, you can also mark with here. Because you can relate to this as both a what? A point in the period. Because how do you understand prophecy to fulfill? Progressively, right? It's a progressive development, right? Here you've got the message being empowered, or at least beginning to be empowered. Because what message was Samuel Snow giving him? What message was committed to him? What do we call it? It's the midnight cry, right? It's the midnight cry. And the midnight cry was given to empower the second angel. Is it not so? And the midnight cry typified which message at the end of the world? The loud cry. And when is the loud cry given? We usually say the Sunday law, but that's a very limited, way to look at things. Because how does Sister White define the loud cry? She says it's an increase in power, it's an escalation. It's identifying a progression, are you getting me? So just as we have a progression in Middle history, it means we have a progression in our history. So here at midnight, we also have what?
Tree.
Tree and?
Yeah.
Now let me ask you, what was that message designed to do? The message that Samuel Snow received here, that was to empower the second angel. Just think of the parable. Was it just to arouse the virgin? To do what?
Prepare them.
Okay, when it says, and at midnight there was a cry made, behold the bridegroom cometh, and all the virgins arose, and what happened?
Trim their lamps.
Trimmed the lamps, and then there was a separation, was there not? The cry at midnight produced a separation. Is it not so? So it is separate. So who did that work of separation? The man who gave the cry. Right? The man who gave the cry did the work of separation. But which angel does the work of separation? The third angel, right? I understand those that say the second angel, that's a different truth. But it's the third angel, right? So it means which angel actually arrived here. I'm not saying he finished his work on July 21st, that's not what I'm saying. But in principle, when you look at the prophetic narrative, it's the third, right? You have the third angel, in principle, being marked here. So you can mark the third angel here, can you mark him here?
Yes.
You can mark him here. So you have the third angel. So when you come to October 22nd, it is really the arrival of the third angel. It's the what? It's the confirmation of the third angel. Is it not? Because what was Samuel Snow and then those that joined him, what were they teaching in this history preceding October 22? Well, they were predicting October 22, were they not? They were saying October 22 is coming. October 22 is going to be the shut door. October 22 is when Christ enters the most holy place. And as soon as he comes out, he's coming down to the earth. Of course, they didn't understand the progression. But that's what they were teaching, is it not so? They were teaching the very things that they started grappling with here So can you say prophetically that those truths first arrived here? No, prophetically you can mark them before. You can mark the seeds of the third angel before you actually get to October 22nd, 1844. And I know that might seem like I'm rejecting Sister White's testimony, but I don't believe I am, because how is prophecy illustrated? How is prophecy illustrated? Progressively. And that's something we need to understand, right? Now, I have a quotation. If you read Christ Object Lesson 412, what does Sister White call midnight?
Crisis.
A crisis. Now, ask you a question. Was July 21st a crisis? Don't try and force a crisis into it, okay? Was it a crisis, as far as we understand? You could say maybe there was developments of it that were going to be, but was it a crisis? But we call it midnight, don't we?
Yes.
So why are we saying it was a crisis? It's not a crisis when we call it midnight. Huh? Yeah, no, historically there was no crisis. I'm saying, why do we call it midnight? Are we correct in calling it midnight?
Yeah.
Are we correct in calling it midnight? People are not sure anymore.
Yeah.
Are we correct in calling July 21st midnight?
Yeah.
Yes, because the Millerites actually identified it, and there's reasons to prove it. But when did the crisis come? October 22nd, right? If you read in Great Controversy, she will tell you that the crisis came at the great disappointment. So it means October 22 must also be what? It must also be midnight. Right? So if this is midnight, and this is midnight, what does that make midnight? It makes it a period. A period of how long? Look at the literal. A period of, when you're talking about midnight, it's going to be how long?
6 hours.
Midnight is going to be how long? It's an hour. So 1 hour. Midnight is 1 hour. What's midnight? It's 12 o'clock, is it not?
Yeah.
But you can also look at it from, okay, 00, but 12 to
12:59.
12, okay, to 12:59 to 1 o'clock, right? It's an hour. You can also relate to midnight as an hour, can't you?
Yeah.
The midnight hour. That's why my notes are called the midnight hour. So it means from July 21st to October 22nd is 1 hour. Is it not? The hour of midnight. Yes?
Yes.
Do you follow what I'm saying? So if this is an hour, midnight hour, what does that make this? From here to here. It's an hour. It makes it an hour, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is at the big level. This is for Adventism. We see that. Now we're going to bring it down to the priest level. Now that we've done this, we understand what a fractal is. Same pattern, smaller scale, dealing with a specific group of people. Right? Okay, so let's draw another line. Maybe before we deal with this line, let's go to a line that my brother mentioned about Christ. What time was Christ arrested?
Midnight.
He was arrested at midnight. And what happened to him? He was bound. Right? He was bound. Now prophetically, which angel does the binding? So it means the third angel arrives at midnight. Is it not so? That's another witness. Christ is arrested at midnight and is bound at midnight. There's a separation at midnight. Is it not so? So it means the third angel arrives there. But was that the end of what Christ was going to go through? Because what then happened to him? He was tried 7 times. Then what? No, he wasn't put on the cross. Something happened before he was put on the cross. Here he is bound. Right? I'll tell you. Procession. Was there no procession to Calvary?
Yeah.
After he had been tried to put a cross on his shoulder, and they walked all the way to Calvary.
Yes.
Is there a procession in a parable that we teach that's on the board? What parable? 10 virgins. At the midnight cry, there's a what? There's a procession to the bridegroom's house. Right? So you've got a procession, and is this still Christ going through this experience that began here? So it's still the history of prophetically the third angel, is it not? And then when he proceeds to Calvary, what then happens to it? He's put on the cross. So the putting of Christ on the cross was not just an instantaneous thing. He did not just wake up and then all of a sudden soldiers are nailing, Christ on the cross. He had to be arrested first. He had to be tried. He had to have the cross on his shoulder. He had to walk to Calvary. Then he was put on the cross. So the development of the work of the third step, because don't we teach that the cross is the third step? Don't we teach that? Reform line. But the development of it was how? It was progressive. And what did he call that period? He says, my what has come? My hour has come, right? And the hour of the power of darkness. Isn't that what he said? Hour and the power of darkness. So this is the midnight hour, is what I'm saying, prophetically. Do you see that? So now, we said for the priests, the tithing time is when? 9/11. Right? Where's the shut door? It's midnight. So what we need, based upon these two witnesses, so that this pattern is complete,
Two waymarks before.
we need two waymarks that precede it. We need a waymark here, and a waymark here. It's not so. And I'm saying this waymark is the prediction before midnight. Right?
Yeah.
Saying this waymark is the prediction before midnight. So what's the midnight cry? What was the midnight cry in Millwright history? They were predicting October 22nd, 1844. The midnight cry in our history is predicting the Sunday law. And the prediction before midnight is predicting midnight. So it's the same, you see that. But preceding this was the initial revelation of the message that's going to be publicly given here. Is it not? And I'm saying that began 2014. Right? That began 2014. When you get to 2014, then the truths that we are now understanding began to be opened up. It's in 2014 that Ezra 7:9 was really put in place, and Ezra 7:9 is given us this structure. Were it not for Ezra 7:9, we wouldn't really have been able to put in place midnight and the midnight cry before the Sunday. You understand that? I know some people in here are new, might not understand that. But Ezra 7:9 opened this up. You get that? Fractals began to be opened up. So that we can do what we just did here, right?
Yep.
And the role of Islam post 9/11 began to be opened up in greater detail. We've got many truths that began to be opened up from 2014, and I'm saying, and those are the very truth, those are the very elements that we're using to come to the conclusions we're coming to now. So 2014 becomes what for the priest?
Midnight.
It becomes midnight for the priest. Or at least the beginning of it. And then what does PBM become? The midnight cry. And then midnight becomes what? The Sunday law, which is the shut door, close of probation. You get that? And this whole period would be what?
Midnight.
It would be an hour. Do you see that? It would be 1 hour. Yes? Okay, so we're going to build on this, but bringing this to a conclusion in the next, just when we take down the characteristics that we have here, what do we expect to begin here? Here, the second angel empowered and the third angel arrived. Right? So what do we have in 2014? You have the second angel being empowered and the third angel arriving. And I'm saying, for me, this explains why you have many characteristics in 2014 that are similar to 9/11. You had Islam at 9/11, didn't you? You have Islam in 2014, didn't you? You had the Christian right being active but restrained at 9/11. The Republicans, the people who want to pass the Sunday were active at 9/11. The same people were active in 2014 but they were restrained. Right there, you have a temple cleansing beginning at 9/11, but what do you have in 2014? A temple cleansing that's escalating, right? It's like a confirmation, it's an empowerment. Are you getting what I'm saying? So it might seem like I'm shifting things from there, but I'm not. It's just a progressive development. But what began here now escalates here. Do you follow my logic? Okay. So you have the second angel, the power third angel. the same thing here. Only that when you get to PBM, what's the difference? The difference is here it went public. And then you had 50,000 coming out of the churches to stand with the Millerites. Is it not so? Here it also goes public. And there are people that stand with the church triumphant. And here at PBM, what happens? It also goes public, and it's a call to the Levites to come and stand with who? With the church triumphant. Is it not so? We're just taking the lines and showing the repetition. The last point which I want to put in place, which we'll take up in the next study. My brother has mentioned that which seal began to be opened in 2014. The seventh seal, because it's number 7. But when the seventh seal is opened, what does the Bible say? We're going to deal with this.
Half an hour.
There is silence for half an hour, right? So, and I'm saying this is an hour, is it not? It's the midnight hour. But this middle marker divides this period into 2. So you've got half and half, right? Half an hour and half an hour. And we're going to deal more on that in the next presentation, connect it with Revelation 8, and basically confirm what I was trying to show you, that the third angel began his work of separation in 2014. So let's pray. Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you for being with us up to this time. I pray, Lord, as we take a break that might help us to refresh. Lord, there's a lot of information, and we don't want to confuse your people. Please give ways to convey these truths in as simple a manner as possible. And please also, Lord, assist your people to stay on, Lord, and even if they might not understand everything today, may they have the perseverance, the persistence, and the desire, Lord, to study these things so that they might understand. And grant them their request according to their faith. We ask and pray in Jesus' name and we say, Amen.